Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Man Cave. Noticing in the picture that back wall looks extremely white and extremely bright. And I don't know why today. I thought I left that light on that's over there, and I didn't. It looks whiter than normal, but when I look around like this, it's very dull looking. When I turn around and look at it with my eyes, but on camera it's extremely bright, or at least it looks that way to me. Anyway, that was just a stall tactic. You guys are coming alive in the comments today. I see several jokes and things. Looks like we'll have a good time. This is going to be a short one. I don't have a whole lot to cover, but I did create that title with purpose because something did really fall down and really did go boom. And I figured most of you would think it was something to do with the water wheel, but unfortunately, fortunately it wasn't anything to do with the water wheel, but it did have to do with this. Well, we dodged a bullet here. This giant tree, which is probably 250, 300 years old. I don't know, something like that, probably, anyway. It's big. Fell, just came out of the ground. It's still green, as you can see, but it's also rotted. It's green and rotted both. Look here, there's a hoop on this. I wonder if somebody used to play basketball on this or something. Probably. And you can see how rotted the wood is down in here. In fact, there's a mushroom growing right there, or actually it's not a mushroom, it's a fungus. But wow. Well, there's my start on my firewood for this year. At least it didn't hit anything. It didn't hit a house or anything. In a side note, this is one area where I have found some old coins. I found an Indian head penny up here. So maybe after I get this cut up, I'll search the dirt around it and see if there's anything old around it. And I'm not going to cut that up today, I don't think. There was no storm, there was no wind, there was no reason for that to fall down except for the fact that it was just time for it to fall down. And it fell. Anybody have any more questions why I took those giant trees down right in front of my house? Yeah, it was time for those to come down too. I mean, they weren't rotted. In fact, they were in pretty good shape. But you don't know what you don't know till you don't know it. So I took them down just to be safe, because even good trees that aren't rotted can, when they get that big in a windstorm, and everybody knows they can be blown over. Well, especially when they get that big, there's a lot of leverage at the top in a windstorm, and yeah. So now they can't fall on my house because I took them down, those ones out here in the front yard. But that one there is right up next to the old house, the original old house on the farm. It's really not the original, but it's the original that's still standing. Because as you know, if you've been following along, there were two houses that used to be way back on the back of the property, or well, middle of the property almost. That are no longer there, and there's no traces of them left, and that's where I've been finding all the stuff with my metal detector. But I'm kind of anxious to get that cut up and sweep that area right under where the tree was in case there would be anything there. I doubt it, because that tree's pretty old. I really think that tree's at least 200 years old, and I would bet more like 250 or 300. Impossible to tell because it's rotted to the core, so you couldn't count the rings if you wanted to. But it's really big around. You can't reach around it for sure. Anyway, that's about all I have for this morning. I'll just say that we did have our lesson last night. I never know how those lessons go. I really don't. I one of the one comment, I think he was taking exception that I kept saying it was easy. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. I mean, the concept of what I'm teaching is actually very easy, very straightforward. Playing music in general is not easy. I mean, nobody thinks that, just, learning to play music from scratch is easy. It's not. But the concepts that I'm teaching, the natural number system and the fact that you only have to learn 2 patterns, and there's only 7 numbers, and you only have to learn 2 patterns with those 7 numbers, and then you'll know everything that you need to know about where those chords are for any song you want to play. Now, granted, it takes from that point on, it takes a whole lot of practice, and it's not easy at all to play music, but it's at least simplified down to the point where you can find your 3 chords that are in every song. So if somebody says we're in A, well, you'll instantly know where 1, 4, and 5 are. And those are the 3 chords that are going to be pretty much in every song. So it just simplifies that learning process is what it does. And then right at the very end, it was past, I couldn't comment on it. Someone said, He just thought it was hilarious, the comments that I make, like the one comment, and it's kind of a rude comment when you hear it out of context. It was that this is not the complicated type music, the staff and where the lines and the notes and all that. It's not that formal kind of music. And I said something like, if that's the way you're thinking, I don't remember how I got into it now. I said, but obviously that didn't stick. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I don't mean that as a slap to anybody. That's not how I meant it at all. What I mean was that super complicated learning process of that kind of music. And if you know that and you understand it, more power to you. That's just perfect. I think that's wonderful. I'm not knocking that at all. I wish I did know it. I just don't know it. But my point is that process of learning music that way is so cotton picking complicated that no wonder it didn't work. I mean, like, so many people are going to fail that way. And to prove that point, think of how many thousands and thousands of kids start out on a violin in school, and how many tens of kids stick with it. Thousands start and tens finish. It's because it's so crazy complicated, and the way they're teaching it is so crazy complicated. And violin's one of the hardest instruments on top of that. So that's my point about this, is that if you want to learn music the way I'm teaching it, I guarantee you there's not a simpler way to think about it. And that's why I don't want people comparing it to what they already know, because what they know is complicated. This is not like that. And that's why this is so hard for adults to understand, is because they can't think this simple. They can't turn loose of all that other stuff, and they can't believe that it's this easy. But anyway, I'm belaboring it. I mean, I beat it to death, but that's how I feel about it. And I know that it's like that. Whenever I teach people face to face, they get it pretty quick, and I can see what you're stumbling on, and I can explain it better. But when you're doing it like this, where I can't see anybody's expression, I can't see how they're feeling about it, then I don't know where to go with it. Anyway, let's look at the comments and see where we're at. Sidecar Bob, looks like I'll be watching later. This will be setting for a long weekend. Okay. Well, we hope you come back there and watch. Let's see. Moving down, looking for question marks. Dottie, Jerry, I'm going to have strings changed on my mandolin. What kind of strings do I need to put on for a beginner? Well, I would say for sure, Dottie, you ought to stick with just light strings at the beginning until your fingers get toughened up and all that. And in terms of how high the action is, you want it pretty darn low. And I don't, I can't give you exact numbers on that. I mean, you want it about, I don't know, 10 thousandths at your first fret, something like that, and about 40 thousandths or something around the 12th fret, 45 thousandths around the 12th fret, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now that the only way you can get it that low is if the fretboard is perfectly level, because otherwise it's going to buzz and rattle on you. So the fretboard has to be perfectly level. Then you recrown all the frets, and then you get your strings set down to about 10 thousandths at the first fret roughly, and about 45 thousandths at your 12th fret. That's the best I've got. I hope that helps. Dottie's asking prayers for her grandson, and I've been praying for him. I hope everything goes really well. Like I said, the good news is that he's young, and they also know everything about the heart. They're really good with the heart. If you have to have a problem, at least you can count that they know what they're doing with the heart compared to other things. There's so many other things, they're just guessing. But with the heart, they've got it down pretty good. Bill Rhodes, good afternoon. David Tharp, I decided to take up fencing. My neighbor insisted that I put it back. Wavy Gravy, my next door neighbor finally got back on his feet yesterday. And that's what happens when you miss too many car payments. Yeah. Let's see. David Tharp, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, you might be crazy. Ducks don't talk. Sue Peel. That's a good one, David, she said. MFC. How do you make holy water? I'm afraid he's going to tell us. Ronald Todd. My grandson is getting a new metal detector today, and he's 8. Very excited. Any suggestions? Well, I tell you, one of the best places to find stuff is at local parks and things, if they allow you to hunt there. If you have sidewalks where people walk and you're allowed to hunt next to those sidewalks on public ground or whatever, you'd be surprised the coins you'll find along edges of sidewalks. Back years ago, when I had a metal detector, occasionally I would take it to work with me. Very rarely, it almost never happened, but once in a while I would take it to work with me. And like I had a friend that had some public ground in St. Louis, and I also had a rental place too. And I would hunt along the sidewalks on those two pieces of property. And like on a lunch hour, you could find $6 to $8 worth of change just on a small section of sidewalk. So I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could give every homeless person a metal detector and just say, go find your lunch money? I mean, you can find enough to live on. If you didn't have anything, you could find enough to eat on just by searching around sidewalks and things in downtown areas. Moving on. Let's see. MFC, to make holy water, you boil the blank out of it. I had a feeling that was coming. Let's see. Looking for question marks. Timothy Werblow. Great lesson last night. My playing is really coming around. Great job, Jerry. Well, thanks, Timothy. I really appreciate you telling me that, because I don't know. I've never felt more indifferent. I don't know what the right word is about my lessons. It's like I don't know how they're going over. It's like you can't tell. You really can't tell. It's like I have no idea if it's good or bad or indifferent. I just don't know. Mike Saba, Jerry, are you going to make trusses for your building, or are you going with rafters? The answer is yes. I don't know, honestly. I've been kicking around trusses. I've been kicking around the idea of trusses because I think they're easier. you can't see them anyway once the building gets sited and all that. I mean, the traditional way would be the rafters for sure. But because you can't see it anyway, trusses are easier, and I'm thinking I'm just going to build trusses. Now, in one way, they're not easier. I mean, the way that they're easier for me is when you're building a building by yourself like this, you don't need much help. You can just stand the truss up and tack a little brace on it, you're good to go. Where rafters, you kind of almost need 2 or 3 people to help hold one in and hold, there's a lot of things to it. Where the trusses are fairly straightforward, I can do them by myself. I've done them by myself on large buildings even. So, I don't know. I really don't know. I'll know when I do it, but until I do it, I don't think I'm going to know. But it's a good question because I've been kicking that back and forth myself, and I just don't know for sure. But I think trusses is the way I'm leaning. Dottie, Jerry, I'm a beginner and I'm getting what you are teaching. Well, good, Dottie. I just wish that, like, on anybody that's struggling, I wish we could just take 10, 15 minutes face to face and I could show you what the problem is that you're struggling with, and maybe show you a different way to get over it, I hope this doesn't sound like too big a brag, but I really don't remember. Well, let me think about this now. Can I say this? I would say there's probably been 1 or 2 students that I've taught face-to-face that really did struggle and continued to struggle, 1 or 2, now that I think about it. But 98% of them got it on the face-to-face, and all of the kids got it. All of them did. I don't think I've ever had a failure with a kid. They get it. Because they don't have the preconceived notion of how hard it is, and they don't have any way to compare it back to the complicated stuff that they already know. They just take it for face value, what I tell them, and I'm not lying when I say all I see is taillights leaving. They just pass me up so fast it's not funny. I mean, I don't know a single kid that I taught that I can keep up with. Cash maybe is the closest one right now, and that's only because he's new at it, number 1, and number 2, he's playing a guitar instead of a mandolin. But on all the kids that I taught mandolin to, there's nothing I can't do what any of them do, and that's the truth. They all have passed me up so far. I can't even. It's not even funny. Let's see. Rude Jensen, the chord patterns on a guitar have more variations in compared to the mandolin. When using a capo, it will be more easy. Yes. So there's 2 ways you can do the exact same thing with a guitar. 2 ways. And I say exact same thing. One way you can do the exact same thing. The other way, it's the same thing, but it's more complicated. So the one way you can do the exact same thing on the guitar is that you play all bar chords so that your chord is the same shape and everything, and then you'll start to see the pattern with the numbers. You'll get it. That would be one way to do the same thing that I'm doing on the mandolin. The other way on the guitar, which is probably more practical, is to take just one key like G, and you learn the numbers in G. And once you get them down and you've got them memorized, then go to your next favorite key, C or D or whatever it is. Learn them in that one, then go to the next one. Learn them in that one, go to the next one. The difference is you got to learn it 7 times. So there'd be 7 patterns, if you will, versus just 2 patterns with the mandolin. So anyway, yeah. So it applies. What I'm teaching applies to any instrument, though. I mean, it really does. People, I think, get it confused and think you can only do this on a mandolin, but you can do it on any instrument. It's a little different, but it's the same. The concepts are the same. moving down here. Dottie says, there for a while I thought something was wrong with cause I didn't get it. Well, Dottie, when I say it's easy, all I'm talking about is the few concepts that I'm teaching. The overall thing of playing music, it's not easy. It's just not. If it were easy, monkeys would be doing it. You never see any monkeys except me doing it. So, Dean Barnes. Hi, everyone from sunny upstate New York. Jerry, is there any way to adapt that jig that you made for your sawmill to cut the pie-shaped pieces for a short log to cut your shingles? No, Dean, there really isn't. It's a good idea. I mean, it's a similar concept, but there's a much easier way to cut shingles. And you'll see how I do that when I get to that part. But I sit here and it's, how everything's easy when you just talk about it. It talks cheap, but it's way easier than that process. That thing works really good for cutting those wedges for, if I wanted to go into the business of selling mandolin backs, and I may still do that, off the sycamore, I might do that down the road. I just got too many other projects right now, but that jig did actually work really well for sawing up those rounds into pie-shaped wedges. But for shingles, that would be cut in the wrong direction anyway. The grain direction would be wrong for shingles. And so you would want to do it differently. And so basically for shingles, the way I envision it is you make 3 or 4, I'm going to try to do 4 if I can, 4 18-inch blocks that are, say, 8 inches square. And then you tilt all 4 of them up a ½ inch. You slice through there. And now you got a ½ inch thick on one end, and you just tilt them. You only tilt one end a ½ inch. So you slice through there. So you got a ½ inch thick piece down to nothing on all 4 of them. Then you tilt them all the other, or then you actually take the wedge out from under them where they're sitting flat. Now that one edge that you barely cut anything off of is now a ½ inch higher than the other edge. So then you cut through it again. Then you tilt them again. Then you cut through it again. Then you take it down and then you cut through them again. And you just keep doing that. You keep alternating that. And it's a very simple way to do it. And it will work. But I'm not going to split them. Splitting them is too much of a hassle, number one. Plus, you got to have completely clear grain wood if you're going to split them. And I don't have any completely clear grain wood. Someone said that they've never ever saw shingles with knots in it. Well, I have seen shingles with knots in them. It's not the normal, it's not the common, but it's what I'll have, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, I say that. If it just turns out where this just doesn't look like it's going to work, well, then I'll probably switch to some other kind of tree. But right now, I'm planning to use cedar for 2 reasons. Well, 3 reasons. Number 1, it's pretty much a waterproof wood. Cedar's pretty good. Number 2, it's abundant as heck around here. Number 3, conservation says I should cut them all down anyway. So there's 3 good reasons to use cedar if I can. But if it turns out that it just doesn't look like it's going to work with the knots and all that, well, then I'll switch to something else, like maybe sycamore. Because sycamores have a good clear trunk. And you can cut sycamore shingles pretty easily. The negative of sycamore is they don't like to dry real nice. They like to curl. So I don't know. It's one of those deals where I'll know what I'm going to do when I do it. Some people can't deal with that. Some people just can't live their life that way. But that's how I live my life. I just let it happen, and then if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. That's pretty much the way I do it. Let's see. Okay. Wavy Gravy. My brother-in-law is not exactly a genius. When I asked him what his favorite Beatles tune was, he said, "Hey, hey, we're the Monkees." Hey, we're the monkeys. Um, Outboard Tinkerer. Hi, Jerry. I heard there is an estimated $250,000 on the streets all over the USA. Not sure that's accurate. I wouldn't doubt it at all. Not even, I wouldn't doubt it that much. In fact, I'd say that's an underestimate. You would be surprised, seriously, how much stuff is in the ground. I mean, even here, keep in mind, we're kind of out of the way. This is not exactly the hub of human activity where we live here. And we find stuff everywhere. And quite a few coins when you get right down to it. I mean, not like you would find in the city, but just think of the difference there. Where you've got millions of people mingling around, like at parks and sidewalks and things. We find quite a bit here, which probably has one 100,000th of the traffic that you would find in a big city. It's crazy. It's mind-boggling, really, when you get right down to it. Ronald Todd, Jerry, your lessons are definitely working. I've never played a lick before, and now I'm starting to get it. Hardest part is not think like a guitar player. Yeah, it's it just takes practice. I mean, after you understand what I'm trying to teach, after you get that, then it's just practice and repetition, practice, repetition, and you just keep doing it, and you'll just keep getting better and better and better, and then you can move on to bigger and better stuff. I mean, I'm teaching you what I call just the plain label basic stuff, you know. It's enough to play dang near any song you ever hear in a simple way, if you will. But you can always improve everything I do, you know what I'm saying? And most people do. It doesn't take much to improve over what I do. Joe Knoll, Jerry, don't second guess yourself on your lessons. I am self-taught and have taught many children over the years. Thanks for all your years of education and insight. Well, you're welcome, Joe. Thank you. And I appreciate your comment there. Thank you very much. Kelly Manis, I get the lesson. Ready to move on to something new. Okay. Old Hickory, it takes a lot of practice and experience to get that. It's covered with something previous point. Yeah, okay. I don't know. What I was hoping to do in the next lesson is to hear people make their comments here and then, hit those points. But I think if I don't hear any, confusion points between now and the next lesson, then what I plan to do is in the next lesson is to just play a bunch of songs, like play a whole bunch of them, like maybe 10 or 20 songs, and maybe just play the first verse and chorus of about 10 or 20 songs to show you how they go. And then you can always come back to the video to, replay it if there's a particular song you want to learn, So that's kind of what I have in mind for the next lesson, unless somebody changes my mind and says there's something they're stuck on, Paul Walton, how many board feet was in the last cedar that you cut? Cedar goes for $8.50 a board foot. Cutting your own is cost effective. I don't know. I didn't figure it up on a board foot basis. It would have covered 7 feet by 8 feet. So 7 times 8 is what? Is that 56? Am I thinking right? So 56 square feet roughly. So if you figure 56 times 850, and I'm not good with math, somebody else can figure that out. I don't have a calculator handy. So 56 times 8 that must be somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 or something. Isn't that right? Or am I way off? Anyway, See, MFC, last one for now. The owner of the tuxedo store kept hovering over me. I asked him not to. Fine, he said. Suit yourself. The Outboard Tinkerer. Love your Johnny Comes Marching Home mandolin playing on your studio recording. Any tabs around? I don't know how to read tab myself, to be honest with you. I mean, years ago, I sat down and learned a little bit of tab, but it was so many years ago. It was probably at least 20 years ago, and probably more like 30. And what little bit I've understood then, I've already forgotten it. I've never tried to go back to tab, so I just don't mess with tab. So sorry, I don't have anything like that. But guys, that's going to be it for today. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the saga on Sue's lawnmower. You know, I told you the belt broke. Well, I showed you that in that vlog yesterday or day before. I can't remember now. But anyway, we ordered a new belt. In fact, I ordered 2 new belts just so I'd have an extra one. And the belt came in, so I thought this morning the first thing I was going to do, and I got a late start. I didn't even start till 8 o'clock, and that's late for me because I'm a morning person. But yesterday was such a long day because I started at 6 in the morning and pretty much worked the whole day till the lesson was finished at 8 o'clock last night. So what was that, 14-hour day? So I was pretty wore out yet, and so I didn't start till 8 this morning. Otherwise, I'd have probably got further along on fixing the lawn tractor. But anyway, I started to put the belt on this morning, first thing. And before I put it on, I always check to make sure that mechanically it's okay, you know. So I went around, I'm looking at the pulleys and different things. Well, sure enough, I grab a hold of one of them, and it's shaking bad. It's like the whole spindle, you know, like you got 3 different spindles where your blades go on. Well, the one spindle was like this, wobbly. I mean, it was, you grab a hold of the pulley and it was like this. It just was shaking big time. And they should be just solid. You shouldn't move at all. So that meant I had to take that whole thing completely apart. And there's a lot of bolts and stuff to get that apart. So I got all that apart. Then I had to clean all the grease and crud off of it because it's really nasty. And it took quite a while just to get it cleaned up. Got it all cleaned up. Then I started trying to put it back together, trying to see what was broke on it, you know. And I couldn't really find anything wrong, and so I bolted it all back together just out of the tractor, not in the tractor. I've still had it on the bench, bolted it all back together, and it still was wobbling. And I'm going, why is that wobbling? It shouldn't be wobbling, you know. I don't see anything wrong here. Well, it turns out there was a spacer washer, if you will. It's an extra thick washer, about so thick, and it goes around the center hub, and it rides on the bearing. The pulley sits on that, and then that sits on the bearing. Well, that washer had wore out, the washer that was in there. So sure enough, I couldn't find one that would fit it, so I actually had to make one on my metal lathe this morning. That took quite a while. I'm not really set up for some things right now. I've got a 4-jaw chuck on there, so it's just more complicated. Anyway, so it took me a while to get that washer spacer made, but I finally got it made, put it all back together, perfect. It's just like factory, really. And so I'm ready to put the belt back on it. And then it was time to get up here to get ready for the vlog, so I decided I'll be putting the belt on it this afternoon now. I was hoping to be done with it so I could just relax the rest of the afternoon, but it don't look like that's going to happen. So I'm going to get off here. I think a couple of things scrolled up, so I'm going to check those real quick. Preston Johnson says, Jerry, I've put cedar shakes on over a butyl membrane. They sprayed Thompson water seal on the shingles. It glued the knots in place. You're doing great job on the Waterwheel. Thank you. Yeah, well, I've kind of got the exact same idea in mind. First of all, with all the experience I have woodworking, and again, I'm not bragging, I just been doing it forever. I can tell when a knot's going to hold and when a knot's not going to hold. You know what I mean? Like, you can just look at a knot and know if it's the kind that's going to stay put or not. So assuming that these knots look like they're going to stay put, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But if I do see some that look like they're going to come loose, odds are I'm going to either possibly put CA glue on that if I think there's going to be a problem, or I'll just get different wood, or get better cedar. But as you said there about the membrane, I plan to cover the whole roof with a membrane before I put the cedar shake on there. I'm planning to cover it with what I think they call ice and water dam. It's the stuff you typically put at the edge of your building that's real sticky, that the shingles stick down to. Well, I'm planning to put that over the whole roof. And that way, when you drive nails through it, it's pretty much self-sealing throughout the whole roof. And then I'll just cover that with the cedar shake. And like you said, it'll pretty much glue it all in place anyway in the knots and the whole bit. Let's see. Another one here. MSC says, Jerry, you rock. Thanks for all the interesting material. Well, thank you. Red Jansen says, when using only Barry chords on a guitar in the same pattern for 145, it sounds a bit boring. Okay. Well, I didn't say everything I tell you is totally practical. I'm just saying if you want to do it that way, the bar chords, if you wanted to use bar chords on a guitar, you could basically do the exact same thing I'm doing on the mandolin. Is your camera on auto iris? I don't think this camera has anything auto. It just is. I don't know. It's one of those, to me, they're cheap cameras. It's a Logi 920, I think, or 930C, something like that. I don't remember now. I don't ever go into the settings on it. I don't know. I haven't changed anything, so it just is what it is. I could go into that extra, there's an extra program you can go into and look at it. I may do that later if I think of it. But I don't have anything else to do. I might as well, huh? Harvey Conway, a board foot is the volume of wood, by 1 inch thick. Right, I get that. Mine are only 3/4 inch thick, but typically in the United States, typically you get ripped off on that anyway. They pretty much call a 3/4 inch board a board foot, even though I realize it's a full inch. But what I cut that for was it's 3/4 inch thick by 8 by 7 is really what it amounts to. So technically it's a little less than the board foot. I do know that how big a board foot is. Michael Landreth, Red Jansen, there's been literally thousands of songs in 145 bar chord guitar. If you guys go back to our last live concert, I don't think there was a single song that we played, I don't think, that didn't have a 145. And just think of how many different sounding songs we played, yet they all had a 145. It's amazing how many songs and melodies you can get out of 3 chords. It's crazy. That's going to be my last word today. We will see you Monday, and I don't know if I'll get any videos out this week. Go out and watch those last several I put out on those products. I tried to use each one of them in a meaningful way. I didn't just show the products. So go out and take a look at what I did with them. I would appreciate it. We'll see you later.